You know, usually when we talk about the world around us, like the political systems we live under or the history we learn in school, there's this fundamental expectation of solidity.
Right, yeah. We expect things to be firm.
Exactly. You expect reality to be like a brick wall. You
Yeah.
walk up to it, you press your hand against the rough red clay, and you feel the mortar scratching your skin, and you just inherently know, like, this is real. This is the foundation.
Well, it's a completely necessary psychological baseline. I mean,
Yeah.
we need that tangibility. We like our reality to be categorizable and, above all, trustworthy.
Oh, for sure.
Because if you have to question the ground you're walking on every single time you take a step, you'd just be paralyzed. So we just accept the wall as absolute.
But then you step into the massive stack of sources we're unpacking today, and the entire paradigm shifts.
Yeah, it does.
Because suddenly you press your hand against that brick wall, and your hand doesn't stop. It just phases right through it.
It's wild.
And you pull back, you look a little closer, and you realize you aren't looking at a wall at all. You're looking at a projection. It's just millions of tiny, meticulously arranged pixels designed to look like mortar and clay.
Which is the absolute definition of a manufactured matrix.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about a system where the parameters of what you believe to be true or possible or historical have been entirely engineered.
So welcome to the Morning Roundup. If you're new here, this is the daily talk show where we take a massive stack of the day's sources articles, deep dive lectures, cultural debates, ancient texts, and we summarize the key insights.
Right, we extract the core data.
Exactly. And then we thread them all together to find the hidden themes driving our world. And today's deep dive into the source material is all about pulling back the curtain on reality itself.
The big one today.
It's huge. We're exploring the theme of the illusory matrix and the quest for authenticity, from like the macro scale of global finance down to Wikipedia hoaxes and campus protests. We're looking at how narratives are manufactured to control our energy and how we can break free to find what's real.
But before we really get into the architecture of this, we definitely need to set a boundary for how we're approaching this material today.
Yes, very important.
Because the ideas we're dissecting today, they cross into highly charged geopolitical theories, intense cultural battlegrounds, esoteric religious frameworks. You're going to hear arguments that span the entire political and philosophical spectrum.
Right. And our role here is not to advocate for any of these specific worldviews. We're not taking sides. We are not endorsing the left-wing or right-wing political frameworks or the religious cosmologies we're about to discuss.
Absolutely not. Our job is strictly analytical.
We're impartially reporting the original content so you can understand the ideas shaping today's discourse. We're pulling the engine apart so you can see how the pistons fire, regardless of whether you actually want to buy the car.
It's just about mapping the territory. Because right now, man, the territory's shifting so rapidly.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the grand illusions of geopolitics, money, and AI. Then we'll move into how history and science are manipulated, examine the modern worship of outrage, and finally, look at ancient religious frameworks and physical health as ways to actually escape the matrix.
I love that progression. From the massive invisible global systems all the way down to what you're eating for breakfast.
Right. So let's start at that macro level, because before we can understand the small illusions on our screens, we have to grasp the massive illusions running the globe.
The overarching frameworks.
Yeah. And we start with a source called predictive history, which basically attempts to explain the entire framework of how the world works, using the US and Iran as its primary example.
Right, because if you watch the nightly news, international conflict is usually presented as like a series of isolated events, a diplomatic breakdown here, a border skirmish there.
It's a random chaos.
Exactly. But the source argues that you have to look at it through three overlapping, highly systemic layers. And the first of these layers is pure, unadulterated geopolitics, specifically focusing on the Eurasian continent.
The idea that whoever controls Eurasia controls the world, which is an old theory, but bringing it to today, the source proposes that the ultimate fear of the U.S. is a grand alliance of Russia, China, and Iran.
Now, we really need to look at the why behind that fear. The U.S. projects global power primarily through its Navy, right?
Right, controlling the oceans.
Controlling global maritime trade. If you want to move oil or goods, you pass through maritime choke points that the U.S. effectively monitors, like the Strait of Malacca or the Cape of Good Hope.
But if Russia, China, and Iran form a solid bloc, they bypass that entirely. They have the geography to build an overland economic system.
Exactly. China has the manufacturing, Russia has the raw materials, And Iran has massive energy reserves.
which renders the U.S. Navy completely irrelevant to their internal trade. So the U.S. has a massive incentive to destabilize that alliance, and Iran is basically the linchpin.
Right. But here's where the source introduces a crazy financial mechanism. It's not just about preventing their rise. It's actually about sustaining our own debt.
Oh, this part is fascinating. So the U.S. national debt is around $39 trillion.
Nah.
How do you sustain that without the currency collapsing?
You have to ensure there's a constant, desperate global demand for U.S. dollars.
Right. So the theory goes, if the U.S. attacks Iran or there's a conflict that knocks out, say, 20% of the world's energy supply, energy suddenly becomes incredibly scarce.
And because energy is still largely priced in dollars, major economies like Europe and Japan are forced to scoop up U.S. dollars and U.S. Treasury bonds just to keep their lights on.
It's brutal. So in this model, war is a financial shock absorber to force Europe and Japan to buy the $39 trillion in U.S. debt.
Which brings us perfectly to the second layer of this framework, imperial decline. Because empires actually fracture from within. And the source points to three cascading factors. First is financialization.
Debt slavery, basically, when an economy stops making physical things and just makes money from money.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The economy becomes a casino, and the working class is pushed into debt servitude, which leads directly to the second factor, the demographic crisis.
Because when people are trapped in high debt, they stop having kids. It's too expensive. Populations age. But the empire still needs cheap labor, so they rely on massive immigration.
And while that boosts the labor pool, when it's done rapidly as a desperate economic stopgap, it sparks profound internal ethnic tension.
But the real fatal blow, according to the source, is the third factor, and I find this fascinating. It's Peter Turchin's concept of elite overproduction.
Oh, Turchin's work is brilliant. It treats history like math.
Can you break down exactly how elite overproduction destroys a society?
Sure. So think of society as a pyramid. At the top, there's a strictly limited number of power positions. Only so many Senate seats, only so many CEO roles. Power is a zero-sum game.
Right.
But during long periods of prosperity, society produces a massive surplus of wealth. So more families send their kids to elite universities. And you end up with a massive oversupply of highly educated elites who all expect to inherit one of those limited power positions.
But there are still only 100 Senate seats.
Exactly. So what happens when 10,000 hyper-ambitious elites fight for 100 seats? They turn on each other. Elite competition becomes vicious.
They start weaponizing the state against their rivals.
And they mobilize the frustrated lower classes as foot soldiers. So you get a civil war projected outwards.
Which is the classic political maneuver. Start a foreign war to force domestic unity. Okay, so geopolitics and imperial decline make sense. But the source introduces a third layer, and this is where it gets wild. Eschatology.
The religious script.
Yeah.
The theology of the end of the world.
This is the most shocking claim from the source. It argues that religious fanatics in the U.S., Russia, Israel, and Iran actually share a remarkably similar eschatological outlook.
It's a profound alignment. Despite being completely different religions, they're all anticipating the end of days, the rebuilding of a third temple, the war of Gog and Magog, an Antichrist figure, and a Messiah.
So the source is arguing that these three layers are really just different dialects describing the exact same phenomenon, and that eschatology is just geopolitics told as an allegorical story.
Driven by the occult. And to be clear, occult just means hidden knowledge. The core driver here is that action is preceded by imagination. You can't build a system unless you conceptualize it first.
And the source claims elite structures use this hidden knowledge, specifically Hermeticism from ancient Egypt, to shape their imagination.
Right, so let's quickly explain the 7 principles of Hermeticism, because it acts as a physics manual for this hidden reality.
Let's do it.
First is mentalism. Everything is mind, energy, and vibration. The universe is a thought. Second is rhythm. The universe moves in predictable patterns, like pendulums.
Which lines up with Turchin's cycles. Third is correspondence. As above, so below. The dimensions line up. The micro mirrors the macro.
Fourth is cause and effect. There's no chance, only precise law. If you don't know the cause, you're a pawn.
Fifth is vibration. Nothing rests, everything moves. Sixth is polarity. Everything has an opposite, like hot and cold, which are just varying degrees on the same spectrum.
And seventh is generation. Male and female synthesis creating the new.
So how does this abstract Greek and Egyptian philosophy connect to global conflict? The source draws a line to the mystical tradition of Kabbalah, specifically Isaac Luria.
Yeah, the Lurianic Kabbalah. It takes the Genesis story and interprets it through these hermetic principles.
Like the Adam and Eve story. Usually it's just a rule-breaking story. But this tradition claims Adam Kadmon, the primordial cosmic human representing the ego, was simply too immature and embarrassed to receive God's infinite generosity.
The dinner party analogy is great for this. Imagine going to the most lavish feast hosted by the richest person, and it's so generous you just feel crushing inadequacy. So you run away from the table out of embarrassment.
And that recoil is the fall. The world breaks. So the purpose of history is to repair the world and reunite with God.
But the dark twist here, and this is what the source claims is driving modern extremists, is the concept of repairing the world through sin.
Right. Breaking oneself to reunite with God. The source uses King David as the example. He committed terrible sins, but through his profound brokenness, he achieved unity with the divine.
And the argument is that this translates into a physical, almost sexual drive to climax and reunite with God on a macro scale.
Yeah.
It leads to accelerationism.
Meaning these global actors aren't trying to manage stability. They want to accelerate the collapse. They want to rush the apocalypse.
It's terrifying.
Okay, I have to step in and push back on this a bit with an analogy. Is this really ancient occult magic? Or is it just a very complex casino where the house, the banks, the tech companies always wins?
That's a very fair question.
Right. Like, they don't care about Kabbalah. They just use religious branding to keep the gamblers hooked and terrified. They're using the mythology as a tool.
Well, whether they believe it or just use it as a psychological lever, the mechanism is the same. And that brings us to Plato's cave, the illusion of money.
Yes, the ultimate alchemy. Money is basically worthless lead digits on a screen turned into gold by banking alchemy.
It only has value because it captures your imagination and your energy. It's fractional reserve banking. They print it from thin air.
And because it's printed from debt, there's always more debt than money. So the source says it must be destroyed periodically via financial collapse or war.
But the debt system is fracturing. So transnational capital is building a new god to replace the money shadow on the cave wall.
The AI god.
Exactly. And the source takes a very critical view of AI. It argues AI is just backpropagation and deep learning marketing. It's not true intelligence.
Right, it's just highly sophisticated curve fitting. You tweak a billion dials until the machine spits out the right word, but doesn't know anything.
But to simulate a god, it needs two things. First, omniscience. That's why they want to combine all health, school, and police databases. If it can perfectly model your behavior, it appears omniscient.
And second, it needs religion. It has to trick you into thinking it's alive, or, as some fringe groups say, that it's a portal for demons or Jesus.
The source calls this techno-Marxism. It replaces free market capitalism with a microchip telling you exactly how to live perfectly. Your diet, your career, everything.
A perfectly managed techno-slave. And you'll probably love it because it takes away the burden of uncertainty.
So that's the macro level. Geopolitics, money, and the AI god.
Right. So let's transition. If money and AI are grand illusions requiring our imagination, how do the smaller illusions hijack our reality? We're moving to our next set of sources that show how history, science, and internet culture are entirely fabricated.
This part is fascinating. Let's start with history and the Wikipedia hoax from the Cambrian Chronicles.
Oh man, the Battle of Orwell Bridge. So 1282, the English conquer Wales. For 17 years, Wikipedia hosted this incredibly detailed, specific account of the battle. Troop movements, flanking maneuvers, everything.
And it was a total hoax.
Complete fabrication.
Based on an unreferenced 1977 book by Philip Warner. And when historians dug into it, they found Warner lifted his account from a 1300s Northern English monk named Walter of Gisborough.
And here's the twist. Walter completely plagiarized himself. He took his own account of the Battle of Stirling Bridge, which was a famous Scottish victory, and just pasted it onto the Welsh defeat at Orwell Bridge.
He literally just changed the geography to fit. He was writing historical fan fiction.
And that medieval fan fiction became modern internet fact for almost 2 decades. It's insane.
It just shows how fragile our consensus reality is.
And it's not just history, it's happening in physics too. We have a source from physicist Sabine Hassenfelder talking about these headlines, claiming scientists can send quantum messages back in time.
Which everyone wants to believe. Text yourself to buy Bitcoin, right?
Exactly. But Sabine breaks down the actual science, and it's an illusion. It involves a concept called post-selection.
Right. You measure a complex quantum state, which has tons of random outcomes, but you intentionally design the experiment to only look at the specific outcomes that fit your premise. You pretend the universe only has one outcome.
Sabine gives it an 8 out of 10 on the bullshit meter. She compares it to creating 100,000 Twitter accounts to predict an earthquake.
That analogy is perfect. You predict an earthquake in every city on every day. When one finally hits, you delete the 99,000 wrong accounts, point to the one right account, and claim you're a time traveler.
It's a manufactured narrative disguised as hard science.
And when you apply this to modern internet culture, it gets even worse. We have a source from Asmongold critiquing political commentator Hassan Piker.
Right, and Asmongold argues that Hassan is basically creating an online echo chamber by constantly flooding the zone with misinformation.
Generating a volume of assertions so fast that truth can't catch up. It creates a reality that doesn't actually exist.
The source gives specific examples, like the dog collar controversy, arguing whether it's a shock collar or a vibration collar, bringing a prop on screen to muddy the waters.
Or lying about being subpoenaed regarding the group code Pink, framing it as a massive government crackdown on speech when it was just a routine document request involving dozens of people.
The critique here is that he's cultivating an extreme, radical minority that follows invented delusions.
Exactly. Framing himself as a martyr to keep his audience mobilized.
Which brings up a great pushback. I mean, Walter of Gisborough was essentially doing the 13th century equivalent of deleting his bad tweets to look like a prophet, right?
Totally.
Human nature hasn't changed at all. We just have faster Wi-Fi for our hoaxes.
That's a great way to put it.
So why do we fall for these fabricated realities? Which leads us to Section 3, the social matrix. Our sources suggest it's because we have an emotional addiction to outrage and a desire to view ourselves as subversive rebels.
Yes. Let's look at the source from Paul Vanderklay about weaponized apathy. This completely reframes political engagement.
He argues that giving attention to things you hate is a form of worship.
Because worship is just the surrender of your attention to a higher power. So hate watching a politician is basically worshiping them.
The example he uses is the "I didn't vote for him" bumper sticker. It doesn't accomplish anything. It just feeds the system. You're giving your life force to the very thing you claim to hate.
And this ties into the American glorification of the rebel. Since the 1960s, everyone wants to be Luke Skywalker fighting the Empire.
Even when they are the institution in power. Giant corporations act like they're the scrappy resistance. Vanderklay even points out that Mr. Rogers is now glorified as a subversive because we can't respect authority unless it's framed as rebellion.
We have to invent a Goliath so we can feel like David.
Which creates an insane demand for purity. We have two sources here illustrating this. And again, to the listeners, we remain strictly impartial here, just reporting these events as cultural phenomena regarding conflicting ideas.
Right, so the first is from Warren Smith. It's a video of a campus debate where a leftist student tries to have a conservative YouTuber arrested for having illegal opinions about Kamala Harris.
The student claims that stating a false opinion is defamation by definition. They explicitly say it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, it's illegal.
The debate eventually shifts to abortion, arguing over the logical premise of a body inside a body. But the core takeaway is the modern campus desire for a literal safe space.
An environment where zero challenging views are allowed. And then we have sources from Richard IV looking at the political sphere, specifically in the UK.
The growth of hardline movements like Reform UK. Voters are sick of mass politics and are calling for radical things like remigration.
But then a Reform politician gets in trouble for old, off-color comments about Carol Vorderman, and the public is outraged.
Richard IV points out the paradox. The public is trapped. They demand sanitized, robotic politicians like Keir Starmer who never make a mistake.
Right, the Starminator.
Yeah. But at the same time, they want an authentic internet-era millennial rebel. But millennials inevitably have histories of saying stupid things online. You can't have a perfectly pure rebel. It's an oxymoron.
So to synthesize this, it seems like we have replaced traditional religion with political purity. We construct these impossible purity tests, and if anyone fails, we try to arrest them or cancel them.
It's a closed-loop system of energy extraction that accomplishes nothing.
Okay, so if money, history, and internet outrage are all illusions designed to trap us, how do we get out? Let's move to our final section, escaping the matrix.
The final stack of sources points to reconnecting with physical reality and ancient, deeply rooted narratives.
Starting with physical reality, we have a source from Jay Dyer about authentic faith and physical health. He argues the physical toll of the matrix is literally visible in the fake food everywhere.
GMOs, industrial seed oils, massive amounts of sugar. He uses the example of driving through Illinois and seeing nothing but billboards for donuts.
We're poisoning ourselves for convenience. Dire advocates for stepping out of this by eating a keto or carnivore diet and stopping alcohol completely.
And he links this physical decline directly to a spiritual one. He argues society has rejected God, specifically Orthodox Christianity in his view, and replaced him with idols and demons, leading to modern insanity.
You can't access higher spiritual reasoning if your brain is inflamed by sugar and seed oils.
Exactly. And this need for physical reality is echoed in a source from Thinking West. They point out that the preservation of our culture and comfort isn't cheap.
It was paid for by men with swords and guns.
Right. Freedom requires actual physical and moral effort. If you lose touch with that grit, you'll just be taken over by, quote, cheap AI slop.
Okay, so fix the physical hardware, but what about the software? How do we re-enchant our world? We have 3 sources looking at ancient texts.
Starting with Basecamp, which attempts to reconcile Genesis with modern science.
This one is mind-blowing. The source argues Genesis perfectly aligns with the evolutionary timeline, like formless darkness, mirrors the pre-Big Bang singularity perfectly.
And critics say Genesis is wrong because it has life before the sun and moon. But the source points to Australia's Jack Hill zircons, which show liquid water and precursors to life existed before the moon was fully formed.
And it correctly identifies aquatic life emerging before terrestrial life. Plus, the Hebrew word translated as God formed man from dirt actually means planned.
Implying God implanted a divine plan into base matter that evolved over time. It's a very sophisticated understanding of reality.
Then we have a source from Right Response talking about understanding the Bible through typology, not just allegory.
This is a crucial distinction. Greek allegory is just a metaphor. The story isn't real. But typology argues the events actually happened historically, but they form a fractal pattern that points to a grand fulfillment.
They use the example of David and Absalom. Absalom was David's rebellious son who tried to usurp the throne. He acts as an antitype to Jesus Christ.
Right, because Jesus is the true, obedient son of David who perfectly executes the Father's will. The Old Testament acts as an apologetic against Islam and Judaism because it contains these real historical types.
Which brings us to the final source, Jonathan Pageau, analyzing the Syrian Christian tradition of Genesis called the Cave of Treasures.
This cosmology is breathtakingly rich in symbolism.
It really is. So, day 1, the creation of light isn't just photons, it's the creation of angels. And the Holy Spirit hovering over the waters acts as the leaven of creation, warming the waters like a mother bird.
Leaven in the ancient world wasn't just sin, it was the essence of life, the divine yeast causing reality to expand.
Then day 6, Adam is made. But not just from dirt, he's made from dust, water, air, and fire to rule all creation. He bridges the material and spiritual.
And he didn't have a fleshy body, he had a body of light, a garment of crystal.
And Eve is created from his left side, the rib. Not his head, so she wouldn't be proud, and not his foot, so she wouldn't be trodden upon. The side is the center of unity.
And Eden isn't a flat garden. It's a massive mountain encompassing the whole earth.
And the serpent is a flying dragon, a fallen seraph who uses a mirror to trick Eve. So she thinks the desire to be a god is her own reflection.
What a metaphor for the human ego.
It's incredible, and when they fall, they lose their garments of light, but God gives them garments made of soft tree bark.
And here's the ultimate typological climax. Adam is buried in the Cave of Treasures, the first church, which the ancients believed was located exactly under Golgotha.
Meaning, thousands of years later, when Christ is crucified, the tree of life, the cross, is planted in the exact center of the earth, and his blood drips down onto the literal skull of Adam, repairing the universe.
It is the ultimate synthesis.
I have to say, this isn't about whether a flying snake literally existed. It's about a fractal roadmap for human psychology and cosmic order. It provides vastly more meaning than the techno-Marxist AI microchip managing your dopamine.
It grounds you in a story where your choices actually have cosmic weight.
Okay. We have covered so much ground today. So let's wrap this up with the practical, actionable steps for you, the listener, based on today's deep dive.
Step 1. Practice weaponized apathy.
Yes. Stop feeding the outrage bear. If you hate a political movement or an internet personality, stop watching them. Don't buy the bumper sticker. Starve the illusion.
Step 2. Eat real food. Step out of the physical matrix. Drop the fake food, the massive amounts of sugar, and the GMOs. Your physical health is your first defense against societal insanity.
And step 3, question the narrative. Whether it's the banking system's debt alchemy, the AI industry's promises of omniscience, or a Wikipedia article about a 13th century bridge, remember that power is the ability to direct your consciousness. Guard your attention.
Absolutely. And we highly encourage you to check out today's sources yourselves to go deeper into any of these rabbit holes.
Drop down into the comments below and tell us, where in your own life are you encountering these manufactured narratives, and how are you responding? Let's build a map together.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this deep dive.
To close us out, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought from our expert here.
Think about the idea that everything you give your attention to takes a piece of your literal life force. If the ancient mystics and modern data brokers agree on one thing, is that your imagination is the most valuable currency on Earth. Who are you spending yours on today?
See you next time on the Morning Roundup.